Hey, dear listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, Jorge and Anfisa. Let's continue to watch and see what happens.
So did you all make up? Obviously you did, but is this how fights are?
I don't think it's guaranteed that they made up. In fact, well, I guess we have seen them make up, so maybe they did.
All the time with you guys, throwing the phones, throwing something?
I've had to replace phones a couple times.
Yikes. And the fact that they're laughing about it, that's extremely disturbing. Just very if the genders were reversed, they would be kicked off the show, I'm pretty sure. The fact that and I've talked about this before, and I'm not some manosphere person. We tend to disregard all victims, but particularly when it's a male victim. Again, just imagine if there was a man on this show who routinely yelled, broke phones, keyed her car, hit her on camera in rage. They would not show it, but they're showing it now. I'm not saying that they should never show it. In fact, I kind of think that, because a lot of times these shows, 90 Day Fiancé and others, when someone does something questionable off camera or even on camera, they won't even show the couple. And people will say, we're not going to talk about that person anymore because they're a horrible human being. For me, I think it's an opportunity for us to look at something and actually learn. I don't know the answer as to whether or not it should be shown, so I'm not saying that they shouldn't have shown this. I'm saying that it just illuminates the gender issues when it comes to abuse. Now, I have said also before, it's possible that for him, George, he doesn't actually feel abused. You can be abusive, you can have an abusive partner and actually not be afraid, not be intimidated. You could just be like, well, she does this sometimes. But we don't know, because he could just be laughing it off because he doesn't know what else to do.
You're lying.
I had to replace the other time you broke it like that too.
Just once.
And you threw laptop, what else you throw?
But I didn't break it. Your laptop is okay.
Yeah, it just gets crazy, it gets violent.
Yeah, that was my suspicion, that what we've seen on camera is the tip of the iceberg. And because it seems as though she knows how to clamp down on her reactivity when the cameras are there. We've heard her on the phone with him on speakerphone when the cameras are with him, and I don't think she knows that the cameras are there, and she is completely out of control. And on camera, she puts up a tough front, and I think it confuses the audience because her demeanor on camera is like she doesn't care. She's aloof, she's above it all, I'm just in it for the money, I'm smiling, this is a joke, but clearly behind the scenes, she is heavily, heavily invested.
And it's not like I'm getting violent or anything, it's just like things get broken.
Why are you always blaming me?
But what did I do? I don't cause the argument, I have to go to work and I have to do things.
You threw my phone first.
You threw it at me.
All right, well, so that alters things. It doesn't make, two wrongs don't make a right, but the way that they were saying up until this point was he was late, he gets home, we're thinking maybe she's being verbal, and then he breaks her phone, but she threw her phone at him, and then he broke the phone. Okay, again, two wrongs don't make a right, but that certainly does add context. And then she says, why are you always blaming me? And yeah, I can't imagine this conversation going well.
I didn't break it, I just threw it at you.
You caused all this trouble for me, and I've never done it.
So just analyze that for a second. He's saying, I was late from work and you threw a phone at me. That alone is abusive, wrong, odd, overreactive. And then she says in rebuttal, why are you always blaming me? And he's like, well, I'm just essentially saying what happened. Now, I'm not sticking up for George. I'm just saying this is what abuse can look like. And if you've had a partner who was abusive, they will say things like this. And if you don't have outside support, you just start to become gaslit over time. You're just like, well, maybe I'm dumb. Maybe I can't gauge reality. And so what she says in rebuttal, the best thing she's got available is, well, you came home late from work. So to her, the fact that he was late from work means that it was all justified. Just think about that for a second. That's how it feels to her. Now, she doesn't, I'm guessing, wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be a jerk face. I think because of her relational traumas, she's so triggered, it feels like a valid rebuttal that you came home late. I mean, just imagine that you come home late from work with your partner or from the store or something. Your partner is livid and throws their phone at you. Just imagine that. Like, under what circumstances does that make any sense? Unless you have so much distortion as a result of your abandonment traumas.
You threw your phone at him, right? Because he came home late, and then he broke your phone. So that's what I explained to him.
Okay, so I want to go to Nicole and Azin. Do you think Anfisa needs attention, and that's why she's throwing phones?
Yeah.
So another conceptualization that people will go to, it's not entirely without merit, but the way that people will say it, it's like, well, she's narcissistic or selfish or immature. She just wants attention. She's a crybaby. She's like a child and throws tantrums. And the way, even when we look at kids, when they do this, I think people have bad conceptualizations that, you know, they're just in it for attention. Occasionally, kids are, quote unquote, manipulating to get attention, and you need to draw boundaries so that they learn that they're not the center of the universe. But if a kid is having a tantrum, or if they're vying for attention in some dysfunctional ways, it usually means that they haven't got enough attention and enough good attention, and therefore you should give them attention. You know, it'd be like if a child was screaming about food or something. It's just like you don't deny them food because they're screaming. You know, if a kid hasn't eaten all day and they come home and they throw a tantrum because they're hungry, you don't say like, well, you don't, I'm not going to give you food because you're so demanding of food, right? It's the same with attention and love. If they are demanding attention, it sometimes means they haven't gotten enough attention. Again, occasionally kids haven't matured and they're regressing or something, and all kids go through this. They all want to retain the previous developmental stage level of attention. You know, a 2-year-old gets a lot more love and attention than a 6-year-old. And for, you know, obvious and probably and good reasons. So sometimes 6-year-olds will maybe see their younger sister and see how much love and attention their younger sister is getting, and they'll just be, hey, I want that level of attention. Now, do you deny attention to the 6-year-old? No, but you don't necessarily say, okay, I'm going to treat you like you're 2 and hold you and carry you and put you to bed every night and hand feed you and, you know, whatever. So if she, Anfisa, is conceptualized as just needing attention, maybe it's because she does need. Now, George doesn't have to provide that. It should be in a therapeutic context, in my opinion. Now, a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. Let's talk about being a problem solver. Whenever we have a problem in our lives, we go through different stages of change. In the pre-contemplative stage, we're not even ready to acknowledge the problem. When we finally manage to recognize the issue, we enter the contemplative stage. In this stage, we know we have a problem, but we're not ready to take action. We're contemplating what action to take and whether or not to take action at all. For some people, they can remain in the contemplative stage for years, never taking action to improve their life. I'm guessing that some of you are in this stage regarding going to therapy. You've acknowledged that you probably need therapy, but for whatever reason, you haven't taken action yet. Well, as I always say, we all need therapy from time to time, and we all deserve therapy. One way to easily get therapy is through BetterHelp. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and or even live chat sessions with your therapist. So, when you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/Kirk.
While he's working and you don't have many friends right now, so while he's working all day, it's hard to be alone.
If I leave the house and say I'm gonna be back by 3 o'clock, she's already blowing me up by 12 saying I'm hungry or something. It's like, basically it's like having a 4-year-old. It's like having a 4-year-old at home. Like I have to take care of work.
Yeah, again, I think they're heading in a direction of saying that Anfisa is a child and spoiled or something, but I suspect for Anfisa, so, and I think I've said this before, that I don't know, obviously, I can only speculate, but if I heard about someone like Anfisa, I would begin with a hypothesis that she has tremendous abandonment trauma, such that she frequently will regress to that of a very young child. And I think for her, when she's home alone, she feels completely untethered to the world and to herself. It's not uncommon for people to have that experience. It's terrifying to just not be tethered to yourself, to the world. Some of you actually will email and tell me that you experience this. It's a well-known phenomenon when it comes to these kinds of traumas. I'll tell you that you do have a self. It's just a matter of finding it. It's in there. You're not empty. You just are looking into a dark room. There are things in the room. You just have to turn up the dimmer switch with a lot of focused therapy. But anyway, so I'm guessing, I don't know, but total speculation is that she is regressing around noon. She knows he's coming home at 3. But so just imagine with a 2-year-old that you just left them home alone. Said, I'm going to work, I'll be home at 3. Well, by the time noon comes around, the kid's going to be freaking out and is going to be desperate. And if they have a way of contacting you, they'll be like, I'm hungry, where are you? And even just that notion of I'm hungry. I mean, certainly she's capable of feeding herself, right? So I'm guessing that it's an emotional thing to her, that she is desperate for some kind of tethering. She just wants someone to define her, someone to show her that she matters, someone to show her that she's in the world. And being alone without any friends is terrifying to her in that way.
As time goes on, sometimes I would think like, what am I doing? You know, like I would have really deep thoughts of like the situation I'm in.
I don't know, but even her demeanor could indicate, there's not a strong indication, but that could have triggered her tremendously. I'm going to rewind that, because up until this point, she's been holding it together, and she could maybe ride on the assumption that he's upset about their conflict, but that he's not going to leave her. Remember that for people who have those abandonment traumas, any hint, even if it's not real, if it's just imagined, of a rejection, however small it is, even if it's like, I'm going to work, for example, or I don't like what you did yesterday, those kinds of indications will trigger the abandonment traumas, and the person will plummet into terror and pain. And I'm not talking about just like, oh, woe is me. I'm talking like legit physical pain. When we actually look at people's brains, the same centers that light up when you punch someone in the face will light up when you actually go through this experience. So let's rewind that, because I guess I've treated so many individuals and so many couples that have this issue that for me, when I hear someone step on a landmine, I actually kind of flinch. And I did that when he basically is saying he's questioning the relationship, which means he might leave, which is a huge landmine, I think, for her. Let's rewind.
Like, just as time goes on, sometimes I would think like, what am I doing? You know, like I would have.
So you see that turn away that she has. She was really looking at him and then turns away. And I don't know if I'm just reading into it, but let's see how this plays out. So I would take a guess and say that it's possible she just plummeted at least a little bit. Her defenses are going to kick in. It's either going to be, I'm going to be aloof, I'm going to pull away, I'm going to get angry at him, I'll throw him in the bus, this kind of thing.
And did you reach your tipping point? Is that?
Yep, that was my tipping point.
Uh-huh.
Like before that, like she would even throw blows at me.
What?
Like punches.
Anfisa, did you physically hit him?
No.
I don't.
Okay, so maybe she's not triggered because she's still in a good mood. Again, this is so disturbing. He's admitting to being physically assaulted by his partner, intimate partner violence. And Sean asks Anfisa, do you do that? And she's like, no, basically saying, well, yeah, in a coy way. And again, they're smiling, but know that abuse victims will smile as they try to disclose, because they don't know what else to do. They're gaslit, especially if you're a man like him, because early in the season, at the beginning, he was ascribing to what seemed to be toxic masculine ideals, which are not helpful when it comes to recognizing that you're a victim and knowing what's happening for you. But anyway, so and again, just imagine if the genders were reversed. If you asked Jeffrey and Varya, if you asked Jeffrey, like, so you hit Varya when you're upset at her, when she comes home late from work, and Jeffrey's like, well, no. Just imagine that. And that's what's happening right here. Make no doubt about it. That is what's happening. Sean asks, are you criminally, physically violent with your partner? No. Now, again, I don't know how George is taking it. He could be like, well, yeah, I mean, it's not great, but it doesn't really intimidate me. It doesn't really scare me. So it's possible that that's true, but we don't know that. I mean, there's a possibility that he's absolutely terrified, the way that I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't in a situation like that. Also, does it matter? Because it's still a crime. You shouldn't be hitting, even if your partner isn't reacting to it. And I'll tell you, I've treated a lot of abusive perpetrators, not only individually, but in couples. I'll tell you that when I treat couples that have this issue, it's not uncommon for them to downplay and minimize. And when I see it, I call it out. And sometimes it takes a while, with someone like Anfisa, I would avoid stepping on too many landmines in the beginning because they're just going to blow out of therapy and then I'm not doing them any good. So I have to go kind of slow. But I mean, so just to let you know, what I would do right away if I heard this is be like, okay, we have to set some ground rules here. And I almost never do this. I'm not a ground rules kind of therapist, but when it comes to this, I do, for obvious reasons. We'll say, one, I'm not shaming you for what you've been through already, but if we're going to move forward, the violence and the intimidation has got to stop. So we're going to put a safety plan in place, and this is the first topic. And I know you're not asking me for that, but if you want to work with me, this is important. And I'm going to take a guess and say that the two of you would rather not have violence in your relationship. Is that true? Okay. So we're going to work on that first, because we know through research and through my own clinical experience that if there is violence and the threat of violence, we cannot work on your intimacy, on your conflict resolution, because you have too much victimization and intimidation that's happening. And so we have to put that, to rest. And I will work with people. Now it can get kind of odd, and it's case by case basis. And I've talked about this before with this couple, that sometimes I won't even work with the couple because they're too volatile. There's too much violence, and I can't guarantee that I will get a truthful story from either, particularly the victim, because they're worried about, a victim who's being abused might not tell me the truth because they're worried if they do, they'll go home and be abused by their partner. So if I can't guarantee to myself that I can get an honest story and buy-in from everyone and reassurance, even in myself, that the violence will end, and it often will. This kind of violence, like I said, is on one end of the spectrum, and I have had couples that will make these agreements and will stop. And because, imagine you're going to therapy and now you have this professional who is sort of overseeing your relationship, and you have an impulse to go down that road, but you're like, well, we're going to have to talk about this in therapy, so I should probably do something else. And, we lay out a crisis plan, separation, walk around the block, whatever, hang out with the dog, go to your mom's house, whatever. So, yeah. But again, let's rewind this. This is one of the most, if not the most disturbing scene. It's more disturbing than when she hit him, because you could say, well, she lost her temper. In an interview right after hitting him both times, she said, I stand by hitting him. That was pretty disturbing. But in this moment, Sean asks, and she said, oh, yeah. I mean, now, I'm going to take a guess and say that Anfisa went through abuse herself as a young person, as a child, or earlier in her life, because she might believe that it's totally normal to hit your spouse when you're upset. And so, and this is the way the United States used to be. There used to be a lot of violence, a lot more violence. There's still a lot of violence, but a lot more in the past in couples in the United States. And the way that it was talked sometimes was like this. Well, they'd be like, well, sometimes the wife gets out of line, and you got to do what you got to do. And that's essentially what's happening right. Well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.